This baby is happening. Wow. It's been long overdue. And, mate, Matchroom Boxing, 27th of November. It's confirmed. It was made official a few days ago by Eddie Hearn, The Zone. Everyone's been pushing it out there. Mate, just bring it on now, mate.
Okay, so Matchroom has picked up the fight, and they were the second highest bidder, weren't they? So they've definitely got the fight.
That's right. I mean, according to the first bid rules in the IBF, obviously, you know, as we all know from past conversations, Triller was the initial first bid winner, and Matchroom came in at $3,560,000, so they were the second highest.
Wow.
The top rank came in at $2.3 million, and this is US dollars, whereas Triller had come in with obviously I think it was 6.2 million, so they really blew everybody out of the park. But unfortunately, with what's happened, you know, like with the COVID, with Lopez and everything else, and the whole thing, they just couldn't put it together, mate. It was just becoming a bit of a joke. So once again, once the IBF made a decision and everything else, yes, the second highest bidder gets the opportunity. That was Eddie Hearn from Matchroom. They were offered the opportunity. They had 5 days to respond. Eddie Hearn literally responded immediately and said, yes, I want to do the Lopez Kambosos fight. He goes, this is an absolute cracker.
So ball terror in it. Okay. I read somewhere, right, I read this somewhere. Is this a world record for a world title fight of this magnitude, of how many times this fight's been postponed and changed in the last few months? Is it,
mate,
is it really? It's got to be, hasn't it, really?
Mate, to be honest, there's probably a couple of records here that are that have pretty much transpired, and obviously, you know, with what's happened. First of all, you know, the purse bid with such big dollars for a mandatory challenger, you know, to come in initially with Triller's kind of money, and for the challenger, which was George Kambosos against Lopez, to be getting 2.1 million American dollars. I don't think any other mandatory, as far as I know, has probably got that kind of money as a challenger, especially an Australian. Then obviously the date changes. I mean, I can read the date changes out here.
Yeah.
The first bid was initially won on the Thursday, February the 25th, 2021, by Triller, and then obviously the date was pretty much made official that the fight was going to happen June the 5th, 2021 in Miami. Then obviously that got pushed back to June the 19th, and then Lopez gets COVID 4 days out from the fight. He tests positive, so June the 19th obviously fell over. Then August the 14th was basically slotted in as a new date, so Kambosos stayed longer preparing, and obviously Lopez wasn't right. He was still testing positive, and he was still having the effects of the virus. Then they pushed the new date of September the 11th on the, they were going to have the De La Hoya card as well, in regards to the September the 11th. Then we basically, the IBF jumped in and said, listen, there's no more date changes. You've got till the 17th of October pretty much to make an official date for this fight to happen. So Triller basically came back, said October the 5th, which was a Tuesday night in New York. So obviously, once again, we received contracts. This is, I think, the third or fourth contract. We signed off on the contract basically at everybody else by Triller's attorneys. Everybody signed off on it, Lopez's team. 24 hours later, we received another contract. Now they want to move it to October the 4th. So we're thinking like, hold on a second, we just signed a contract 24 hours ago to October the 5th. Now they want to move it from a Tuesday to a Monday night. So once again, you know, we've been very compliant. Basically, you know, we want to get this fight done. Kambosos is ready to create history. We signed the contract for October the 4th. Before you know it, basically, you know, good old Ryan Kavanagh, the CEO of Triller, literally gets on a MMA podcast. I think it's called MMA Hour or something. I think it was on the 20th September, and basically starts to mention on this MMA show that now they're going to do it October the 16th at the Barclays Centre.
Yeah.
And we thought, hold on a second. what's going on here, mate? We can't keep moving these dates. These fighters prepare literally to hit their peak walking into that ring. So, yeah, so it's like, mate, to be honest, I think it's bloody, it's historical.
It's got to be. Look, one of the postponements was because, as you said, Teofimo Lopez had COVID-19. Was this really, really true? A lot of people are saying he had a lightweight problem. Would he make the weight? So he bunged this COVID-19. What's your thoughts, Jimmy?
Mate, look, to be frank, I mean, he's the champion. So at the end of the day, we know that he struggles with his weight, and he's probably still struggling right now.
Yeah.
So, he's called the weight drain kid as well now, because obviously he's a bit delusional. He's a bit delusional with all his posts and everything he's doing lately, because obviously he's trying to make the weight. But when we arrived in Miami from Fort Lauderdale after 13 weeks of training camp, and basically on a Tuesday, literally 4 days out from the June 19th date, and we were told once we got there, pretty much an hour later, once we settled into our rooms, we got told in a meeting with 3 or 4 different people from Triller, including myself and obviously co-manager Peter Khan and George Kambosos, that he basically Lopez has now tested positive to COVID. So the fight fell over. It didn't happen. But the thing is, I wasn't leaving the States until I had confirmation that this was true. So dealing with Triller's chief boxing operating officer, Thorsten Mir, who basically took Peter Khan's job, because Peter Khan literally was on the outer with Triller, because the thing is, he could see what was going on, so he kind of sidestepped himself and was working as a consultant. So they employed a guy called Thorsten Mir. And Thorsten basically, I said to him, mate, I want those medical reports. He says, Jim, they're confidential. I said, I don't give a shit, mate. I said, confidential or not, mate, I know you guys are a neutral entity, so they've got no interest in Lopez being overweight. So if it was Top Rank, you could say, you know what, Top Rank's protecting their fighter. If it was basically, any other promoter that was affiliated to Lopez, you could say, okay, there's something going on, they're protecting him due to make weight issues. But because Triller's literally a neutral promoter, they've got no ties to any fighter, there's no way in the world they would have copped that without actually getting proof that Lopez was positive. So what they did is they sent 2 specialised doctors to Vegas that performed 2 different tests, and basically one proved that he was positive, and the second test, which is a little bit more involved, is called the CT cycle. It tells you how far into your COVID period you're in. So he was 25% on that reading, which meant he was very early into his COVID period. So the thing is, they had to cancel the fight, so they postponed the fight. So he was positive, 100%.
He was 100. Okay. Fair enough. Okay, so Triller's defaulted both parties. So now we hear that the IBF is now defaulting Triller. What happens with Triller now? Will they be allowed to promote boxing again, Jimmy? Do you know?
Mate, look, I mean, when Triller, we initially had a date. We were ready to fly out on the 25th of September. And the thing is, once Ryan Kavanagh went on this MMA hour show and literally started saying October the 16th was a new date, Barclays Centre. All of a sudden, our attorney, Greg Smith, he straight away wrote to the IBF and literally said, hold on a second, we've got a date for October the 4th. Team Kambosos is not budging off that date. As we understand, Lopez's team are not budging as well. So the thing is, we're not agreeing to any date changes. So obviously, it went backwards and forwards for a while. Then Madison Square Garden jumped in and said to Triller, to Ryan Kavanagh, their CEO and their operating officer, Thurston Mir, they said, look, you've got 24 hours to tell us what you're doing, because you've just announced the Barclays Centre, and we're selling tickets at Madison Square Garden Hulu Theatre for October the 4th. Well, Triller didn't come back to them to tell them what they're doing, so Madison Square Garden pulled the venue from them. So all of a sudden, they've cancelled selling tickets for October the 4th, and they've pulled the venue. So now we've got no venue to go to, and there's no October the 4th date because there's no venue.
Wow.
So at this point in time, once again, they were pushing for October the 16th. Now we were ready to get on a plane within 2 days. So we're thinking, what the hell is going on? So once again, they were pushing, and we said, right, we're prepared to basically to look at October the 16th. If you could supply proof of funds in an escrow account of $6.2 million for the fighters. If you could provide that, they had 3 days to come up with it. If they had $6.2 million put in an escrow account, that means that they had the money to put this event together.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately, they could not even provide an escrow account of proof of funds, which literally any businessman would know that you need to put funds in an account which no party can touch to prove that the money's there.
Yeah.
So the IBF made a decision. Team Kambosos pretty much took the lead with their attorney. Lopez basically, he mumbled and fumbled throughout the whole thing, trying to think that he was the guy that was, not wanting to budge. Then he said, no, I'm all good with October the 16th, because he took a bit of a side deal behind his attorney and his manager's back, and it was a shit deal too, to be honest. He took a couple extra bucks. So the simple thing is, Kambosos, our attorney, myself, said, no, October the 4th to date. That's what we signed for. There's no more date changes. And the IBF jumped in and said, you know what? After looking at this whole circus, this whole shenanigans, this whole date changes, we are now in a position, as per the IBF rules, to default Triller, and the championship fight would now be offered to the second highest bidder.
That explains it all. Okay.
Yeah, mate.
Okay, both guys are undefeated, Jimmy. They are fighting for the WBA, IBF, WBO and WBC franchise lightweight championships. 4 world titles on the line. This is huge, Jimmy. This is huge.
And the Ring magazine, the lineal belt as well. The Ring magazine.
Damn, I knew I forgot something. That's not like me to forget something, mate.
No, not like you, Paul, mate. You never forget nothing, mate. But anyway, you're excused for that one, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, there wasn't much publicity about this fight in the beginning, and a lot of people were annoyed, especially in the boxing fraternity. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree totally in regards to the, this thing should be under the spotlights, and this should be getting all the publicity.
1,000,000%.
But the thing is, I think once it initially got announced, after the purse bid, it was really exciting for everybody. And then all of a sudden, it got a date change. So June the 19th was still pretty much, it was still there, and it was getting promoted and people were excited. But once all these date changes started to evolve, a lot of people started to lose faith in what's going on and thought, is this fight ever going to happen? So it kind of lost its shine a little bit. George never lost focus. I mean, at the end of the day, George goes, I am the mandatory. I cannot be removed from my position. And you know what? I am still preparing. If they said to me, I've got to fight tomorrow, I'm still preparing. So we never lost sight of what is in front for George pretty much to fight the champion, Teofimo Lopez.
Yeah.
But now that it's back on with the zone, it's starting to get that coverage, and a lot of people are saying, thank God Matchroom's got it.
Yeah. Mate, there was a time there I was thinking everyone was thinking they're trying to push George out. That Lopez really doesn't want to fight him. That was a feeling.
Yeah, well, they couldn't push him out because
he was a mandatory.
Lopez had two choices there. If he wanted to remain as the undisputed champion or the unified champion, and not fight Kambosos, and obviously the Americans are always looking at fighting their own, and they're talking about the Devin Haney's and the Ryan Garcias and the Gervonta Davises. And if they think that that's a bigger fight for him and there's more money there, well, it was an easy decision for Lopez, and that is just vacate that belt, mate. Let that IBF title go. George Kambosos Jr. is the mandatory, And you know what? Kambosos will make that fight happen in Australia against the number 2 rated IBF guy, Isaac Cruz from Mexico. And we would have done it. But because Lopez is obviously he wants to hold on to the belts. He's very proud of his achievements. And I did see an interview where he did say on Boxing Behind the Gloves, I think it's called, that show, he did say that the IBF belt means more to him than all the other belts because it was the first belt that made him a world champion.
Yeah, right.
And he also gave the IBF belt when he first won it against Richard Comey, when he knocked him out the second at Madison Square Garden, 14th of December 2019. George fought on the undercard against Mickey Bay. He gave the IBF belt to his dad as a gift. Yeah. So he was never going to vacate it.
Okay. Okay, now, this fight, with all these date changes, that it's done a reverse now. It's picked up a lot of momentum, hasn't it? Everybody is now talking about the George Kambosos Lopez fight, aren't they? Everyone's talking about it, mate, ever since.
Yeah, they are, and I think pretty much the reason why it's sort of like back on top of the agenda and everyone's talking about it, and George has been doing a lot of media stuff, and as we speak, George is in the gym, once again, training at Mick Ackaway, with Mick Ackaway there at Just Boxing Gym at Chilora, doing rounds on rounds and rounds and rounds of all the work, getting himself ready. But the reason why it's kind of back on the agenda and everyone's excited talking about it, because you've got a reputable, proven promoter in Matchroom Boxing, Mr. Eddie Hearn, who I've had the pleasure of meeting in London when George fought Lee Selby for the Eliminator, and everybody knows that this is it, mate. This is on.
Okay, Jimmy, you've done in yourself, Jimmy, I know you've done a great job yourself as well as manager, and through all this, your father passed away a few weeks ago, but you guys just marched on, and now everything is set. It must have been tough.
Mate, yeah, it was like, it was really tough, mate. Like, we knew, like, my dad wasn't well, mate. He was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer, mate. So, at the end of the day, he was getting treatment. He was getting his chemo and everything else. And the thing is, we knew that we had to fly out for October the 4th. And obviously, in the back of my mind, even though I'm handling George's business, always on the phone with the attorneys, with the Americans, making sure that everything's on point. We were going to fly out no matter what. And the thing is, it was always in the back of my mind because there was no flights to come back to Australia at the time. You had your quarantine, and I just thought, if Dad passes away whilst we're overseas for the October the 4th date, or we'd come back and we're in 2 weeks quarantine in Sydney, it was going to be a tough pill to swallow, knowing that, Dad passed away. But, things happen for reasons. I believe, there's a God up there, and, at the end of the day, mate, it's all destiny for George Kambosos Jr. And the reason why is this. George's missus, Rebecca, was obviously pregnant with a 3rd child. She was ready to give birth on the 30th of September. Because we were going to fly out on the 25th of September, heading for the October the 4th date in New York, George wanted to see the birth of his kid.
Of course.
So they organised to get Beck induced to have the baby on the 24th of September, and that's one day that I'll never forget in my entire life. The 24th of September, she got induced a couple of days before, a day before. She went into labour, and we were going to fly out on the 25th, right? So you got to remember that. So 24th, she goes into labour, and she basically starts to deliver the baby, which was a baby boy, at 11:45 during the day. My dad in hospital, aspirated, and basically fluid went into his lungs, and he started choking at exactly the same time. And literally, my dad was suffocating and choking, and they were trying to basically bring him back from in the hospital with the doctors and the nurses. And George said to me that his son was struggling to breathe for at least a good 40, 50 seconds at the same time. And then my dad literally passed away a few hours later when young Kambosos was born, it's like my dad gave life to that young kid, and the young boy, which is my grandson, so I've got another beautiful grandson, has taken the place of my dad. And then the fight falls over. We never got to fly out on the 25th the next day, and basically Triller got defaulted, so I never got a chance to grieve my dad properly, because here I am trying to basically get all this Triller stuff, the attorneys, the defaults, the IVF business out of the way. We obviously buried my father on the 1st of October, and here we are now, ready to obviously fly out on the 10th of November for the 27th of November. So this whole thing has got a meaning to it, because not only George never needs motivation to go out and win or do something, but this has just added a little bit extra in regards to now his grandfather passing away, whose name was George Kambosos Sr.
Yeah. Jeez.
You know, so...
Yeah, wow, what a story.
Mate, there's a lot, mate, you know, but look, mate, things happen for a reason, and honestly, I'm a firm believer of that, and with everything that's happened and the way it's all evolved, mate, this is it now. There's only one piece left of the puzzle, and that's for Kambosos to shock the world and literally take every single belt and become Australia's greatest ever fighter.
Mate, that's great. You shared that personal information with us, mate. I'm telling you, that's unbelievable. Really is.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was tough.
Oh,
you know, and don't forget, it was COVID period. We could only have 10 people at a funeral. And the thing is, you know, we've got a Greek background. Mate, we've got hundreds and hundreds of people that wanted to be there to send my dad, give him a great farewell. We could only have 10 people, and we had to really, like, pick and choose who was going to be and who wasn't going to be at the funeral, you know?
Golly. Okay, mate, moving along. Is there a rematch clause in this contract, or do you care not?
No, you can't get a rematch clause when you're a mandatory challenger to the champion for the world titles. There's no rematch clause there.
Okay, when do you and George set off for the USA?
Like I mentioned not long ago, our plan is basically to fly out on the 10th of November. Obviously, 2.5 weeks out from the fight. We'll wrap it up with a couple of the boys that we've aligned with previously over in Fort Lauderdale with 2 more sparring sessions. We'll push out a 10 and a 12. And literally that'll take us pretty much the week before fight week. And then obviously we'll go from Miami to New York, and we'll end up being in New York pretty much on fight week.
Okay, Jimmy, we're coming to an end here. Any thank yous or hellos you want to say before we go?
Mate, I just want to basically, on behalf of George, mostly because he's the one that's doing it, he's the fighter, I just want to say a big thanks to all Australian boxing fans that follow George. You know, everybody that's got behind this kid. He's never had an easy road. He doesn't have a famous surname. He's just a kid that grinds day in, day out, trying to basically, you know, set himself a legacy. You know, I want to thank, obviously, yourself, Paul, with your radio show. You know, talking boxing, pretty much give people an insight on what's going on. You know, obviously, George is there. I don't know if they've got the radio on at the gym at Just Boxing. I know George is there with Mick Ackaway, and there's a few boys out there this morning doing some sparring, and George is not doing sparring today. He's already had his sparring during the week, but obviously he's doing pads and he's sharpening up with Mick Ackaway. Mate, just everybody in general, mate, you know, just that follows the boxing and knows that it's not an easy game. There's a lot involved. But the thing is, there's always a lot of respect for fighters, mate, because they do it tough, mate, you know?
They sure do. Okay, Jimmy, once again, as I said last time I interviewed you guys, on behalf of all of Australia, we wish you the best. And when George becomes a new champion, he promises to come back on my show and talk about his great victory.
Mate, I'm telling you, mate, you're on there, mate, 100%, and that's the plan, mate. The plan, I think we mentioned it last time when we got on the radio and had a chat again, because we thought we were flying out and going for the October the 4th date. Yeah, mate, 100%. George gets them belts. Mate, Kambosos will be hosting, you know, all his fights here and telling everybody, you come here and you fight me because you want them belts now.
Exactly. Okay, Jimmy, thank you for coming on the show, mate, and best of luck. Best of luck to you guys, eh?
Thanks, Paul. Really appreciate it, mate. Once again, mate, giving us your time and obviously, getting on your show and giving your listeners a bit more insight in regards to Team Ferocious and George Kambosos Jr., mate, and all the dealings and what goes on behind the scenes on the international level, mate.
You would know a contract inside and out now, wouldn't you, Jimmy?
Mate, I can even read between the lines. There's nothing there, mate, But the thing is, I know what's coming next. But I never expected this with Triller. But once again, this is just add a little bit more to my resume in respect to what happens with defaults and everything else. But like I said, mate, the IPF has been one of the reputable, sanctioning bodies. And the thing is, they know that Kambosos is there and he's the fight. So there was no way that George was ever in a position where he could be defaulted, even though Triller was wanting to say, well, this is George's fault. He should be defaulted. He should be removed from the ratings. I'm sorry, Mr. Triller, Mr. CEO, Ryan Kavanagh. That's not the way business is done in boxing. You might as well just go back to the music world and the movie world and leave the boxing to the experts.
No, here. Okay, Jimmy, thank you so much for coming on the show, mate, and we're going to go out with Jimmy Barnes. There's no second prize. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thanks, buddy. Have a good day. Cheers, Paul.
Thanks for coming on the show, mate. Best of luck to you guys.
Thanks, matey. Cheers, mate.
Bye for now.